I don't have the highbanker on the Seadoo right now. It's in the car, but I have a gold pan and I'm gonna have a look around this whole area. Out on the Red Deer River today, I just bombed through about 7 gold pans. Well, that one right there is going to be number 7. The area I'm in, it's actually got a bunch of gravel, even with the river this high. The best gold I've found so far, there's maybe like 3 bigger flakes, but if you count everything, there was 14 flakes. I count my colors, flakes, whatever you call them, per shovel load. So 1 shovel goes into the pan. I use a small pan. I don't think it's worth trying to get as much dirt as you can in, so long as you're consistent, because I want to do the least panning to see the largest number of areas. So if I actually have half a pan of dirt, I basically can just multiply those colors by 2 as if I was doing a full pan, and it saves a lot of time when you're actually panning. So this classifier right here, let's zoom in there, that's about the amount of dirt that I'll put in. And then once I actually classify this down, I'll throw out all the overburden and I'll show you how much is in the pan. This is what I just showed you, and everything up here, that's pretty heavy, I gotta say. All of this, that's all classified. Now this mesh, my finger in here for scale, that is called a 12 mesh. I was told that for panning in Alberta, the fine flour gold, a 20 mesh is all you need. You will never have gold larger than a 20 mesh. I'm sure there's exceptions and nuggets that people have found, but as a general rule, 20 mesh. I personally found that if I went to an 8th mesh, it was too coarse and it actually slowed down my panning. I'd get these little rocks in the gold pan. But when I go to that 12 mesh, it pans just as easily as a 20 mesh, except that it classifies out a lot quicker. When you're classifying and shaking, and the finer the screen, the longer it takes for everything to flow through. So that 12 mesh was the sweet spot for me. This is what you get for classified material. So it's really, really fine. And I'll pan this down so you can see just how much black sand I get at the bottom, if it was actually a good enough shovel to have anything to show. I start with the coarse riffles when I'm emptying the pan. Then I shake everything down into the fine riffles. And this is about how much material I'm left with once I've worked it down the fine. And then we slosh everything around. And I like just bringing it over to here. Sometimes I skip the fine riffles. At this point, you can just start back panning to look at it. For the camera, I'm gonna just dip the pan. So you dip it forwards and then release the water. Dip it forwards, release the water. And I'm basically just trying to roll off as much of the material as I can so there's less to look through. I'll try zooming in here. One hand panning. I can start to see some gold actually at the bottom here. You can just sort of keep rolling that out. What I'm going to do next is we're going to back pan. So just a little shake, water to the top and back. Okay, it's pretty hard to organize everything. With the sun, you're going to see some sparkles that are not gold. I may try taking a picture here. All in, this is the best pan I have ever done on the Red Deer River. One of the few pans I've ever done on the Red Deer River, to be honest. But all in, I counted it and we've got about 30-ish specks of gold. I have shoveled decent gold at 80 colors in a pan, but they were 80 larger colors. So for stuff like this, I would be looking more for about 300 colors. Focus, come on. There we go. So I'm going to keep looking, but that is promising. And this may be the spot I come back to just to test the highbanker out for an hour and see how it does. You're looking at the face of a happy person. Didn't really expect to find anything decent. And strangest thing, right here. Come on, focus. There we go. That is about 90 specks in one shovel. So I'm going to continue to investigate, but this is what I find kind of interesting, and I'll show you how I'm doing this. Is this little streak right here, obviously when the river was high, I noticed a transition between these sort of fine gravels and the sand. So I came down here where it's a pretty distinct line. Here you can see 3 holes. So I started right at the transition. That was my best shovel. There was almost nothing. And there was about half of what was here. And we're talking like 15 flecks. But at least it was something, and a decent amount of black sand. So I was like, okay, I should follow that line. So we're gonna look upriver here. And going upriver, I followed that line, and about the halfway point, I avoided the sand. I didn't expect anything there. And then I did a scoop here and a scoop in. Not too great, but the scoop in was actually better than the scoop at the edge. I then came up a little higher. Look, there's my scoop. And right now, here's what I've done. Again, the sand here, I just avoided, but right at that transition where I did the best at the bottom, I did a pan there, and I got another like 15 flecks. I really wasn't too happy about it. I then moved in, took a scoop here. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And you'll notice here there's a little bit of sand that's coming in on top of that gravel, sort of like it's in the middle. And then I decided, okay, well, let's come down a little further. And right here, that is where I just found the 90 specks in a pan. I've panned right down to the edge here, and I didn't do very well. So what I'm suspecting is you can see where there's a transition of sort of this fine gravel and that sand on top. And I'm gonna work up a little bit into this and go into the sand right there and right there. We'll see how we do out of those 3 pans. And straight up there, that pan had another 90 colors. I actually had a tiny little bit less here, maybe a 75. Right here, now let me just point the camera in this direction so you can see. You'll see this transition point where it almost looks like this ledge is falling off. And there's another little transition point up here. If you watch it up front, so right there where it drops, that leads up into where I did this hole there. And then the next drop, this layer here, that pan right there on that layer was my absolute best pan so far. So this thin little ridge right here, if you look at that, it is 2 feet wide. That's it, just from there to there. That gave me 140 colors in one shovel. I just took a pan from this spot to see if that's where it ends, because I have dug down there and I didn't find anything. So we'll see how this one does. And at that point, I'm gonna come back in here, just do one up there and one down here, make sure this area is okay to dig today. Just checking back, that last pan I did, 1 layer below, it was down to 35 colors again, which at the beginning of this gravel bar, I would have thought was phenomenal, but it does drop down. But what's interesting is the line just above that also had pretty good gold, like 95 colors, 75 colors, and then I dropped down a layer to 140 colors. What that is indicating to me is this layer might be sort of double thick. So as I skim that top, 75 to 95 color layer off, I might get down into that 140 color layer. So I'm basically gonna have to do a surface cut with the highbanker running, and then once I've cut that top 4 inches off, then dig a little lower and see how things are panning out. It may get better as I go deeper, although typically in my experience, all of your gold's in that top 3 inches when you have sort of softball to baseball sized rocks and all the black sand is kind of mixed in between those. It's just a solid layer like that. And that's where I'm seeing 300 colors in a pan, places that would actually be worth mining. Those rarely have this thick layer where it just goes down deep. I did dig one spot very similar to this, super soft, incredibly easy to dig, easy to move material. And I actually did okay working just 80 colors a pan on the North Saskatchewan. So I don't know what we expect here today. I was up at 5:10 a.m. this morning, camped out on the Bow River, and just really feeling low on energy as a result of that. But I'm gonna go grab the highbanker, run at least a yard through this, and we'll see what that weighs out at the end of the day. Here's the whole unit. Ready to hit the river and hope we don't lose anything. Holy crap, it's working. We've got it sitting back there. Nothing's fallen off yet. Hoping for the best. I just can't help but to be nervous every time I run this river. The water's dropping even more. And because I haven't run this section when it's shallow, I don't really know where the gravel bars are. I had an aluminum boat I built once with a jet outboard on it, and I was going on this outside bend that seemed super deep. In fact, it was super deep. The water was going so slow, it was like a lake, and I just creamed a car-sized boulder. For some reason, it was sitting right in the middle, and it was sticking out of the water about 3-4 inches, nice pointy corner. Just out of nowhere, you know, the sun's a little in your eyes, but there wasn't enough water to form ripples behind it. And ever since I hit that, I'm just nervous about hitting something with the Seadoo. Now coming up river, there was a tree, you know, with the root ball at one end and the tree sticking down. It looked like the deepest section of the river along that outside bank, but it was just stuck there. So it couldn't have been more than 2 feet of water right there. And that root ball was just stuck in the gravel bar as things start to come down here. So you definitely got to keep your eyes open, and I've got a foot ready to brace in case I do run up on a gravel bar. I know it's going to happen eventually, and when it does, I'll let you know what it does to the hull on my Seadoo. You know, if I'm still around to tell the story, which I should be, because it'll just slide. But we'll see what kind of damage happens when that happens. Hopefully that's not too soon. Anyways, I'm going to set up the highbanker, and I'm gonna run this good ground. It's cool when you're running on the water, but it's time to dig. So sun's out, guns out. I didn't just say that on YouTube, did I? I'm a little nervous about this thing falling apart, so I've got tie down straps, bungee cords, probably more than enough. Still don't know what angle to set this up at. Let's try. It's been a while since I've actually shoveled some Alberta gravel. Hopefully I can find over a gram. That would be sweet. Hopefully I can find a heck of a lot more than that later in the year, but 140 colors. I was expecting nothing today, so it's a bonus. Maybe put on some bug spray here. There's one thing I have learned is you don't want to spend too much time getting this totally level until you've actually run some water through it. Especially on this really soft type of gravel that I'm on, it tends to shift. So one thing I've done is I put a little bit of gravel around some of the feet just to try to make them a little more stable. And then once I get this going, I'm gonna sort of build my tailings trench and direct that so it doesn't just undercut the foot and then have it tip over on me. It doesn't always start on the first pull, but it certainly is nice when it does. It's always second pull anyways. Oh, I should probably point this in the right direction first. Save the priming. Well, hopper's working good, spray bar's working good. Again, this is really loose material, so it's pretty easy to get clean tailing. Pretty sure that would overload any sleuth. I'm considering putting in a second level and actually splitting it so that I've got 24 inches wide of recovery. That's what I used to have. My old beach box was 24 inches wide by 5 feet long of rough top and barrel, and it caught fine gold incredibly well. But in ground like this, you could top it out at about 10 shovels per minute. On average, I shovel slower than that. So it was plenty. And I think on average, I'm going to be shoveling slower into this as well. But I'm just going to put a pan here and sort of see how much fine material I'm actually losing from the wash. So in this location, that's all that's going through on the classification side. I'm happy with that. So I'm basically just going to shovel a bunch, and then later, once it's totally packed with black sands, I'll do a check of my tailings and see how well it's holding gold at various feed rates. Although that might be a video for another day. So I don't know how to run this mat. I'm seeing a little bit emptier than I would probably like to see. Let's shut it down and have a look. I mean, there's material and everything. Definitely some black sand already. I think that's a piece of gold right there. Huh. But yeah, I'm told it's very forgiving matting. Obviously more water flow, I can shovel faster. Less water flow, it may capture better. Too little water flow, it may not capture. I really don't know enough about this mat at this point. Every time I've asked like how many gallons per minute, at what slope, at what rough feed rate, nobody really has any information on this mat. It's all just like, oh, it's forgiving, it works. It should look like this when you turn it off. And that's fine. I mean, I'm sure it does work, but I'd always like at least a start point. I'm gonna shovel probably about 6 shovels a minute, one every 10 seconds. It's like a rough amount, and obviously you take breaks in there, so you're not actually shoveling 360 shovels. Just keep hammering through and see how she does. Just got her idling away in the background. I have done 250 shovels, 270 to a yard, but I'm going to do 300 today so I can split it into high flow rate and low flow rate to compare the results when I get back home. Figured I'd have myself a little snack, some smoked oysters with the old willow branch spoon. I originally thought they'd be a little disgusting, but I started loving eating these things out here. Some fat and some protein, keep it going. Looking forward to having a quick peek in that box before I fire it back up. I'm going to throw a shovel on just before I turn the speed back up again, just to make sure it hasn't emptied out for the last 10 minutes, and then I crank it up and it starts possibly losing stuff. So again, I'm not really sure how this mat works, but give it the best go that it can go. I really think I'm overfeeding it, but still pretty impressed. Clean up, we'll tell. Kind of just been randomly filming this whole gravel bar experience, from panning initially what I was finding, when I started finding the pay streak, and how I was kind of mapping it out. Right, what I'm sitting on right now, I've just been taking that top layer off. So when I'm finished everything, I'm gonna then pan the layer below it and see if the pay continues to head down or not. That'll give me a better idea roughly of how big of a pay streak I'm working with here, so that when I get home and actually do the clean out and I can see, oh, well, I found, half a gram an hour or a quarter gram an hour or whatever it is, sort of how much real estate am I working with here within the pay layer before I have to then go find the next part of this gravel bar or the next gravel bar off the river. Running that pretty hard. That's the amount of concentrates I got. Definitely seeing some gold through the clear plastic. Load everything back up on the back of the Seadoo, make sure it's strapped down tight, and get on back to that parking lot. Strapped on nicely. A little bit of a rinse. Sort of hangs there, keeps it out of the water. I lost the shovel the other day, having it kind of like that, bounced out the back over some waves. So I will be placing my foot on it as we go.